In a dark, gloomy village, a little girl could be seen sitting quietly in a corner. After accepting her fate of dying, a boy suddenly appeared holding a piece of bread in his hand and gave it to the girl. He then went on to tell her that the Redemption Church was giving out free food to homeless people. The girl was skeptical of the bread at first, but after realizing that nothing else could be worse than starving, and with a little persuasion from the boy, she was all for the idea of going to the Redemption Church to seek safety and food to survive. It had been a week since Dion had returned to the human realm, thinking that he had finally escaped from the nightmare he experienced while he was with the demons, but it was far from over since he was now stuck doing paperwork. After discussing some issues with his butler, a commotion happened outside which drew Dion's attention. The estate knights and the lofty knights were arguing, to which Dion then told his butler to send back the knights to the empire. But his butler told him that it was not possible as they were entrusted to him by the empire. Dion then wondered why he had so much paperwork to do after he had handed over the Heart Estate to the king, but also found out that the king returned it to him. This news greatly shocked Dion, as he had no idea of this news, but mostly because he had no desire to own the Heart Estate, as he did have fond memories of the place at all. In fact, it was quite the opposite. Dion planned to pay the emperor a visit, but was interrupted by the sudden appearance of the crown prince and the general, which hates Dion for what he has done in the past. Before the crown prince's arrival, he had heard of Dion's achievement of capturing people from the revolutionary army. He was talking to the princess about the news over a cup of tea. After hearing the news, the princess was more worried that Dion didn't want to see her again after what she had done, and admitted that she had never had to seduce a man in her life since she was a princess. The princess planned on visiting Dion to apologize, but the crown prince told her that it was a bad idea and reminded her that the love she has for Dion was only a performance to bring him over to their side to gain more power and influence. Their plan was going smoothly, and everyone knew that the princess had expressed her love for Count Hart publicly, so no one else would dare to approach him. She then asks the crown prince to find out what Count Hart thinks of her. Back at the Hart Estate, the crown prince was determined to recruit Count Hart, while the general despised him. The only thing Count Hart had on his mind at that moment was how in the world he ended up in that situation. Dion greeted the crown prince and was told to take a seat. Dion then asked the crown prince why they came to visit him, to which he responded by saying that it's just business. After apologizing for what his sister had done previously, he went straight to talking about the main reason why he was there, which was to request a favor from Count Hart. Dion was quite nervous at first, but after hearing that the favor was to become his friend, he was just confused as to what the crown prince was saying. Dion couldn't believe that the crown prince came all the way to the Hart Estate to ask him to become friends. Dion tried to refuse the crown prince's favor, but couldn't do so because of the general's presence, so he had no choice but to reluctantly agree to the favor. The crown prince then told him to come visit him every time he came to the palace and quickly left afterward, giving Dion no chance to say anything. Now the only two people left in the room were Dion and the general. Getting straight to business, the general told Dion that the emperor wanted him to hand over the soldier from the revolutionary army that he captured. Dion guided the general to where the soldier was being kept, but the general was curious about how one of the soldiers died, since he had initially captured 3 of them, but 2 died mysteriously. The general's hatred for Dion could be traced back to the 8-year war, when Dion was just a mere soldier on the battlefield. Dion was the first noble to be conscripted into war as an ordinary soldier, and to make matters worse, he was mentally weak. In order for him to survive, the method that he chose was to brutally kill people on the battlefield, which drove him insane. Dion was tormented by guilt after every battle, to the point where he ended up splitting his own personality. One regular personality that can only recall being regular, and one blood-hungry murderer that he could switch to on demand. That change in personality is how Dion was able to survive on the battlefield for so long, which the general hated about Dion. The general then asked Dion if he could even remember what happened to the soldier who died, to which he responded that wild dogs must have eaten him since he wasn't there to confirm the details. The general then left after hearing what Dion had to say, which he didn't believe a single word of. The general thought of Dion as a dangerous element and wondered why His Majesty was so fond of him. Dion finally woke up after losing consciousness from stress, after which his butler then suggested that he send the lofty knights out on an expedition to subjugate monsters near the bordering estate, to which he agreed, thinking that he could finally get rid of them, but ended up being dragged along instead. On his way to the bordering estate, Dion asked why he had to come along with them as well, and the knight told him that he shouldn't miss out on this opportunity since he thought that Dion was bored at home. Dion tried refusing them in the beginning, but after everyone decided that he should go, he had no choice but to agree. Monsters suddenly showed up, blocking their path, and the knights went out to battle. Sitting in the back, Dion thought that Dame Lion, the knight that the Emperor personality recommended to Dion to take control of the Ghost Knights, was tired since, with her qualifications, she could have joined any knight order that she wanted but had to put up with the Ghost Knights. Dame asked Dion if he was going to join the battle, but he thought that it would be best to let the Ghost Knights handle it so he could take it easy, but it wasn't going to be that easy for him since he got hit by an arrow out of nowhere. After a while, Dion realized that it wasn't a monster that shot the arrow, but an assassin that was sent to kill him. After the arrow was taken out, Dion got serious and told the Ghost Knights to take out their drugs. Over towards the kingdom where the knights were headed, they saw that the great Count Hart was injured and thought of a plan to frame Dion for attacking their kingdom and get a reward since they knew that the Empire wouldn't want another war. Dame asked Dion what kind of drugs the Ghost Knights just swallowed, and he told her that it was a drug that shut down their common sense and made them fight like wild beasts. Dion then went straight into battle, brutally killing anyone and anything that he came across after capturing one of the assassins alive. Dion then rushed forward and killed one of the assassins. The knight was hesitant about killing and reminded the Ghost Knights that they shouldn't try to fight like decent human beings and just leave enough common sense to distinguish friend from foe and just kill everyone. What Dion said drove fear into the remaining assassins, but it was already too late for them to regret their actions, and the only one they could blame for their deaths was none other than Dion's brother, who was busy with paperwork at the moment. The fight raged on, with Count Dion Hart standing in the midst of all the chaos that was happening. As the fight came to an end, the only thing that was left of the assassins were the pieces of their bodies scattered across the ground. Dion looked down on the assassin that he had captured alive previously and questioned him as to who sent them. In the Empire, a complaint from the kingdom of Ilion reached the Emperor. The Emperor's attendant then reported the matter that had happened with Count Hart and how the Ilion kingdom was trying to frame Count Hart to get a hefty reward from the Empire. After understanding the situation, the Emperor thought that he had been quiet for too long and that his attendant was too old to prepare for war. The news shocked everyone who was in the room. The attendant then went on to state that it had been only 2 years since the last war and that it was too soon to start another one. The Chancellor tried to change the Emperor's mind, but was reminded by the Emperor that he was a tyrant and that conquering the continent was his ultimate objective. The Emperor thought that he should take responsibility as the Emperor since he had attained his position by killing all of his other siblings to get the throne. The Chancellor then left after stating that he would prepare a budget for the upcoming war. After the Chancellor left, the Emperor asked the general if he had heard of the Redemption Church, to which the general responded that it was a cult that had been increasing its influence in the slum areas. The Emperor then stated that they had gotten too powerful, and that it would be best to eliminate them, especially since there was an upcoming war. The Emperor decided that it would be best to leave the issue to Count Dion Hart to handle since he was the one who caused the mess. After hearing Count Dion Hart's name, the general quickly opposed the idea of leaving such an important task to Count Hart. The emperor then asked the general why he disliked Count Hart, to which the general then brought up Count Hart's split personality as the issue, but the emperor saw no issue with what the general said about Dion since he was already aware of everything. The emperor stated that if anything were to happen because of Dion's split personality, then that would be his responsibility to deal with. The general tried to persuade the emperor but was stopped. The emperor told the general that he understood his concern and that he wouldn't just let a dangerous person stay by his side without a reason. The reason why the emperor let Dion stay by his side was that Count Hart needed him in order to take revenge on his family, and so the emperor took Dion as his sword and gradually sharpened it until the time came for him to take his revenge. Dion Hart then ended up killing his entire family, except for the one who managed to get away, which was his brother Cruel Hart. So in order for Dion to complete his revenge, he still needs the emperor on his side, and that is what the emperor was using to his advantage to ensure that Dion Hart will always be on his side. Inside the darkness, Dion was surrounded by dead bodies trying to drag him down, and right as he was about to lose it, the other Dion inside of him covered his eyes and told him that he didn't have to remember it, after which he immediately woke up. Dion simply thought that what he saw was just a bad dream and tried to recall the last thing that he remembered but couldn't remember anything that happened after he got shot by the arrow. Somewhere in the Hart's estate, Dion's butler had captured a spy who was disguised as one of the servants. Before the butler could get any information out of the servant, he was quickly killed. As the butler was walking off, he turned and threw the dead spy's termination letter at him. The butler then greeted Dion and noticed the injury on his left shoulder. Dion then asked why he could smell blood coming from the butler, to which he stated that he had just apprehended the spy and that an accident had occurred while trying to capture him alive. Since Dion had also failed to figure out who was behind the attack on him, Butler concluded that it must be the Revolutionary Army, an enemy nation, or a nobility of the empire that was behind the attack. He then suggested that it would be too much alone for Dion to take on and told him that he should ask the emperor for assistance. Dion then left for the palace in order to ask the emperor for help, but had to wait since the emperor was in an important meeting. While Dion was waiting, the crown prince and princess showed up. Dion tried to greet them but was stopped by the crown prince, who stated that friends don't need to be so polite with each other, so he was invited to have a cup of tea with them while he waited for the emperor. The crown prince then told Dion that he had heard that he had gotten injured during the monster subjugation expedition, and that he should be more careful since he had to work for the emperor for a long time. The crown prince then told Dion that he had no intentions of becoming the emperor, which shocked Dion greatly. He explained that he planned on retiring when the time came and that he hoped nothing bad happened to the emperor, who was their uncle. The current emperor, who was once the 9th prince, had killed all of his siblings along with their children except for the crown prince and princess, who were the children of the 1st prince, unlike any other noble. He had visited the 9th prince often, along with his children, until the day he died. The prince and princess then told Dion to take good care of the emperor. Dion then used going to the bathroom as a way to escape the conversation and leave. The nobles in the empire have begun to question the emperor's rule over the empire and are posing a great threat to him, so in order to ensure the emperor's safety, they absolutely need someone as strong as Dion on their side who can kill their enemies even if they're nobles. While Dion had gotten lost on his way to the washroom, he saw one of the servants and called out to him, which startled the servant. He tried to ask the servant nicely where he could find the washroom, but the way he asked definitely didn't come off as he intended it to. Surprisingly, though, the servant turned out to be a spy who was stealing important documents. He managed to injure Dion but ended up falling. He thought that his chances of escape were low, so he decided to attack Dion instead, but he didn't get the opportunity as he was apprehended by Cruel Hart. Dion wondered why his brother was at the palace. A paper caught the attention of Dion that fell from the spy, but Duke Irving was quicker to obtain the document. He then said that it's been a while since they last saw each other and that he had just come to visit the emperor. He asked Dion if he had also come to visit the emperor, to which Dion just said yes. Before Dion could explain what had happened, the prince and princess showed up and saw that Count Hart was bleeding and immediately called for the palace doctor. They thought that the spy's weapon, which had injured Dion, could have been laced with poison. The palace doctor then came rushing after being called, and as he had expected, it was not Dion Hart who was causing him trouble again. He checked Dion's condition, and thankfully his injury was light, but the prince didn't believe what the palace doctor said since Dion was bleeding a lot and asked him to check properly. Suddenly a voice said that it might have been the demon's curse, and that voice came from none other than the general Nemesius. The reason for his presence was to deliver a message to Count Hart from the emperor, which was a summon. Count Hart then left after telling the prince not to worry about his condition so much. Duke Ister and Cruel also went into their carriage and departed from the palace. The duke then figured that what he saw on the document that the spy had was a budget for war. The duke planned on providing special assistance to the emperor so that he could achieve his own personal goals. The emperor told Dion that he didn't look well and wondered if he was heavily injured by the spy since he was the most treasured talent in the empire, but the reason why Dion looked unwell was because he really wanted to use the washroom but still hadn't gotten the chance to. Dion then told the emperor that the reason for his visit was to return the Hart estate back to him along with the ghost knights as well, but the emperor quickly rejected him, and his resignation was not even up for discussion. The emperor stated that if Dion granted one of his requests, he would grant him one wish as well. The request the emperor had for Dion was to completely get rid of the Redemption Church. Dion tried to refuse, but the emperor continued by stating that he had also assigned the task to his brother and would grant whoever completed the task first a wish. After hearing that, Dion quickly agreed to complete the emperor's request. Even though Dion knew it was bait, he didn't want any wishes from his brother to be granted. Dion then told the emperor that he would complete the task first, no matter what, and would defeat his brother.